One of my favorite things to do is to give people the Myers-Briggs personality test. Have you ever taken it? Something I love doing even more than that is giving people a spiritual gifts test. And I love giving people an Enneagram test. And I love giving people a DISC test. And the reason I love doing that is I love it when I read something about myself. I discover something about myself where I'm like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, this is why I think that. And I love having that experience with other people as well. This is going to be one of those experiences. There is something about you that you don't know is there, and this is truly going to be like a before-after moment for your spiritual walk. In order to understand that, you got to understand the background of what we're talking about. For those of you So I drew a picture of an alligator last week, and evidently it wasn't that good. So no laughing, okay? No laughing. So this is the Mediterranean world. This is Turkey, okay? This is Israel, where Jesus lived. This is ancient Egypt, right? And this is the Sinai Peninsula. In 2000 BC, God called Abraham to go, leave his country and his family, and go to the place where I told you, which is here. Abraham had a son named Isaac. And Isaac had a son named Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. One of them was Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers and landed down here in Egypt. While he was there, he was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, missed a genocide, rose to power, and then killed an Egyptian that was beating a Hebrew man, and then fled for his life because he knew that Pharaoh would kill him. So Moses is living now down in the bottom of the Sinai Peninsula. And now he's an older man. Lean over to the person next to you and tell them, at what age do you become an older man? Can you do that? At what age do you become? What age is an older man? Someone in the ancient Near East, if you were going to die by the age of 40, an older man is probably in his younger 30s. So he's an older man. Older man, just look at me, older man, 30s, that sort of thing. And he had married into a family down in the Sinai Peninsula, and he was a shepherd. He was living in Pharaoh's palaces, but he's running from his past. And he tried to get as far away as he possibly could. And so he went down into the Sinai Peninsula. Even to this day, when we were in Egypt, I skipped that trip because in order to do that, you have to go with a military escort. Literally, a machine gun in front of you, a machine gun behind you, because it's so remote. So he's there. Probably some of you can, sort of understand and empathize or sympathize with someone that doesn't want to, acknowledge their past. They're trying to get as far away from it as possible. He's living as a sheep herder, and then something happened. He is living near this mountain right here. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 says, Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, which was later called the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it didn't burn up. And so Moses thought, I'll go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from the bush, Moshe, Moshe. And Moshe said, here I am. And Yahweh said, do not come any closer, God said. Take your sandals off, for the place we're standing is holy ground. And then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. And what did God say? Out of everything that he could have said from this person running from his past, disguising himself as a sheep herder, he's not royalty anymore, what could God possibly say to him? I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of the slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. Moses is like, what does that have to do with me? So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses is like, again, what does that have to do with me? The home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. And now the cries of the Israelites have reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Moses is like, again, what does this have to do with me? Yahweh said, so now go. I am sending you back to your stepdad to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses immediately thought of every excuse that he could. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, don't worry, I got that covered. I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you've brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship back on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites, and they say, the God of your fathers has sent me. And they ask, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? And Moses is thinking, and you'll understand this here in a second, Moses is thinking that this God is not going to tell him his name. It's important that you understand this. It would be ridiculous for the God to tell him his name. But he did anyway. He's like, I'm not letting you out of this. I'm going to tell you my name. I am who I am. Yahweh. That is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. Now Moses knows that he's serious because this God has revealed his name to him. God also says to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, sent me. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel. Say to them, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me. I have watched over you, God said, have seen what has been done to you in Egypt, and I have promised to bring you out of your misery into Egypt, into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. What does that have to do with us? That's a really cool story, made a cool movie. That has everything to do with every single person in this room. You will see in a moment a before and after in your spiritual walk. There are 4 parts to everyone's story in this room. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you've been, but I will tell you there are 4 parts to your story. Part number 1, God chases us. God chases us. I remember when I wasn't a Christian and it seemed like God kept putting into my way my friend Darren, who was a devout Christian at the time. I signed up for this team, Darren got on this team. I got on that team, Darren went on this team. Everywhere I went, Darren was. For those of you who aren't disciples of Jesus yet, for those of you sort of like you've been drugged to church, you're sort of checking this out, you know that feeling. Yeah, I can't kick it. Like, he is chasing me, right? Moses was tending the flock of Jethro in the middle of nowhere. God will find you. God will chase you down, not because he wants to get you, but because what Brennan Manning says. Brennan Manning is a former Catholic priest that became an alcoholic, that became a grace addict. Brennan Manning said, I have been seized by the power of a great affection. My deepest awareness of myself is that I'm deeply loved by Jesus Christ, and I have done nothing to earn it or deserve it. God is chasing you in love to help you. As Richard Foster says, the heart of God is an open wound of love. Many people in this room will be able to resonate with Anne Lamott's story of God chasing her. Anne Lamott writes, I got pregnant in April, right around my 30th birthday, but was so loaded every night that the next morning's first urine was too diluted for a pregnancy test to prove positive. The father was someone I just met who was married and no one I wanted a real life with. So one morning, my friend took me in for the abortion. I had the abortion. I came home that night. I went up to my loft with a pint of Bushmills and some codeine a nurse gave me. I drank nearly till dawn, and then the next night I did it again, and I did it again until the pills were gone. I didn't go to the flea market the week of my abortion. I stayed home and smoked dope, got drunk, and tried to write a little. On the seventh night, though I was very drunk, I discovered that I was bleeding heavily. It didn't stop over the next hour, but I was so ashamed of how stoned I was that I didn't want to call any of my friends, knowing that I just had an abortion. And after a while, as I lay there in the loft, I became aware of someone with me, hunkered down in the corner. I just assumed it was my father. I felt his presence. I felt it as sure as my dog is sitting there, she writes. The feeling was so strong that I actually turned on the light for a moment to make sure that no one was there, and of course there wasn't. But after a while, in the dark, I knew beyond any doubt that that was Jesus. And I was appalled. That was my first thought. She said, I was appalled. I thought about my life and my brilliant, progressive friends. I thought about what everybody would think if I became one of these weird Christians. And it seemed like an utterly impossible thing that simply could not be allowed to happen. I turned to the wall and I said out loud, I would rather die. And I felt him just sitting there on his haunches in the corner of my sleeping loft, watching me with patience, and I squinched my eyes shut. But that didn't help because that's not what I was seeing him with. Finally, I fell asleep, and in the morning, he was gone. That experience spooked me so badly, I thought it was an apparition born of fear and self-loathing and loss of blood. But then everywhere I went, I had the feeling that a little cat was following me, wanting me to reach down and pick it up, wanting me to open the door and let it in. But I knew what would happen. You let a cat in one time, give it a little milk, it stays forever. So I tried to keep one step ahead of it, slamming my house door whenever I entered and left. 1 week later, I went back to church. To be honest, I was so hungover I couldn't stand up for the songs. And this time I stayed for the sermon, which I thought was so ridiculous. Like someone trying to convince me of the existence of extraterrestrials. But the last song was so deep and raw and pure. It was as if the people were singing between the notes. And I felt something rocking me in its bosom, holding me like a scared kid. And I opened up to that feeling. I began to cry and left before the benediction. And I raced home and I felt the little cat running along my heels. And I walked down past the dock of potted flowers under a sky as blue as one of God's own dreams. And I opened the door to the house. I stood there for a moment and then I hung my head and said, F it. I give up. You can come in. And she said that was the moment of my beautiful conversion. I've felt that. Jesus, when he was telling a story about what God is like, he tells 3 back-to-back stories about a lady who rips her whole house apart and puts all of her furniture in the front yard looking for a quarter. About a guy had 100 sheep, left 99 of them recklessly and went after one. About a guy that once he saw his son, that was a prodigal son, he went running after him. And that's what God is like. He's chasing you. If you are here today, you need to understand that that feeling is him. Here's the second thing. At some point, we experience a divine encounter. We encounter God. We're either going to have an encounter with God in this life, or for the people that reject him, they're going to have an encounter in the next life. But you will encounter him. I remember my encounter was in a park in my hometown in my dad's brown 1983 Pontiac Bonneville. We were parked. I was in the driver's seat, and next to me, I felt him. And I said, all right, come on in. I don't have any other options. When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over, he said, look, called him from the bush, Moses, and he said, here I am. And for the very first time, since 2000 BC, all the way down to 1500 BC, God shows up. I want you to lean to the person next to you very quickly, and I want you to see if you can name every mountain in the Bible. Just actually come up with one mountain. Let's try that, all right? One mountain in the Old Testament where God showed up on that mountain. Just one, people, let's do it. Lean over to the person next to you. One mountain. One mountain. All right, don't show the mountains here. Do we have any mountains?
Ararat.
Mount Ararat, okay? Sinai. You did it. We did it. Lean down the row and say, we're awesome. We got our mountain. Let me show the mountains right here. There's a lot more than this. There's Mount Ararat, Noah, ship. Mount Moriah, where Abraham and his son Isaac. Mount Sinai, with who? We just read it, people. Come on. Mount Sinai, right? Mount Nebo, Moses appears, or God appears to Moses. Mount Gerizim on the way in. Mount Carmel, where the prophet Elijah confronted the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Beautiful, beautiful place. The high places, where they would go and they would sacrifice up on the high places. Mount Zion, what city's on top of this? Jerusalem. Mount Tabor, the Transfiguration, the Mount of Beatitudes. So you get the idea, right? In this time of Moses, if you wanted to get close to God, you went up on top of a mountain. That's kind of like, I think we do that today, don't we? We kind of like, you go to the beach for what? Relaxation. You go to the mountains for inspiration. Come on, you're with me. Here we go, right? Relaxation, inspiration. Why? Because there's something beautiful, awe-inspiring about being up. And if you were in a worldview where up was close to God, you wanted to get as far up as you possibly could, which helps us understand the beginning of the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John begins this way. In the beginning was the Word. Who's the Word? Jesus. Jesus, in the beginning, Jesus, it says, was with God. And the Word was, or he was with God in the beginning. And it's the Greek, it says, proston theon. And what I want you to do, and the introverts are going to love this. Going to love this. Just go with me, okay? All right? Lean to the person next to you. Come on. Lean to the person next to you. Come on. Do it. Do it. You do it. Right now. Everyone's looking just at you. Do it. And I want you to lean to the person next to you, and I want you to come all the way up to their nose, but don't touch their nose. Just do it. Come on, do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Did you do it? That's prostantheon. It's literally right up in the presence of the God, okay? All right. So God chases us. God then, we encounter God where we come up face to face, and then God reveals himself and initiates intimacy. This right here, you have to get this point. This is the before and after of your Christian walk. You will look back on this moment if you get this and begin to live this as this was the day when everything changed. Okay? This is the day when everything changed. The third part of your story, everybody's story, is that God actually, we encounter him, and then he reveals himself to us. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask, what is your name? What do I tell them? Moses was not expecting an answer. So when God said, I'll tell you who I am, you are to tell them that's my name. 4 consonants, tetragrammaton. This is the name of God. It is pronounced Yahweh, but there are no vowels in Hebrew. And it is the name I am that I am. Where else have we heard the 2 words I am? Where else in the Bible? In the Gospels, in the Gospel of John. Before Abraham was Yahweh, I am. And they picked up stones. And he said, which of these teachings are you stoning me? They're like, we're not stoning you for your teachings, but that you, a mere man, are claiming to be God. Why is this so important? This is so important because in the ancient Near East, to find out what someone's name is, that person is going to give you a little bit of power over them. There are, in the ancient Near East worldview, there were 2 realms that you lived in. And a lot of you have relationships that are like this. Like you have a relationship with someone, and you're in this outer stage. You're like, I know, I've been working with this guy for 30 years. I know him. I know different things about him. You know him, but you don't know him because you are here. Some of you are in a relationship with someone, and you're like, I can't get in there. Why won't you let me in? So in the ancient Near East, one of the ways that the God would allow you in is that God would tell you his name. We see this all throughout the ministry of Jesus. When Jesus encountered a demon, what's the first thing Jesus would ask the demon? Are you a Cowboys fan? That's exactly, no, he asked what? What's your name? Why? Because if I could get your name, I'm here. And now I'm in a position where you're giving me the ability to affect you. Okay? So look at it this way. All right. Oh, okay. I can't do that. Okay. Hey, here. There's Yahweh, right? How many of you have been in the military? You have a family member in the military? Help me out. Good. You're going to understand this. Last week we talked about Elohim, and in Hebrew, Eim basically is plural, and these are gods. There is an order of authority to the universe. In the biblical worldview, there is Yahweh, then there are Elohim. We call them in the New Testament angels and demons. These are powerful gods that are created. This is I am that I am. I have never been created before. These are spiritual creatures that exist. They were created, and there's sort of this understanding in the New Testament that they can be destroyed. And then there are humans. That actually looks like hummus. It's not hummus, humans, all right? Lisa, when she taught first grade, she used to say, my first graders have better handwriting than you. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue. So what you have to understand is that in terms of authority, it's very military-esque. In other words, that Yahweh has the authority to do whatever he wants to do with the Elohim. Do you believe that? God can do whatever he wants to do with angels and demons. Do you believe that Elohim can really do whatever they want to we humans? Yes. Only if God gives them the authority. I can give you the authority to do something. Jesus comes around and he pulls together 12 guys. And you're watching me. It says in the Gospels, he went throughout Galilee teaching and healing. He spent some time with them, maybe a year, pulls them together and says, guys, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you out to do the things that I've been doing. And they're like, well, how in the world are we going to do that? Because you're going to do it in my name, with my authority. And they came back and they're like, Jesus, seriously, dude, you should have seen it. Like the demons were doing whatever we told them to do. And Jesus is like, yeah, no crap, because I gave you my name. I gave you my authority. Like if you took a letter from a commander 5 levels up and you went to a private in the army and you said, here's the letter, sir, yes, sir, I'm going to do it. And that same level of authority exists here. Why is this important? It's important because God is not listening, by and large, to most of your prayers. He's just not. I hate to tell you, you're like, well, God's not listening. And God's like, that's because you're not praying. James chapter 1 says that the person who prays should what? Should believe and not doubt. Because the person that doubts should not think that they're going to receive anything. They're like a double-minded person. In and out, the flow of the waves. He said that the person who will be able to exercise my authority will be the person that has my name. And so what I'm saying is that there are situations in your life right now when you're praying for someone and you're treating it like, hey, you know what? Sort of like, I don't know, this is like a Hail Mary. If you get around to it, that would be great. Instead of in Jesus' name, with the authority of the Son of God that died and rose from the dead, who has bequeathed to me that authority, I now am going to do what he would do in this situation. That's the authority that you have. Do you realize that? Christians do not walk in the power and the authority that they've been given. The Apostle Paul says, his associates are like, man, this church is like so screwed up and people are doing this. And he's like, you don't understand, the weapons that we fight with are not from this world. We do not fight like that. Now let me just talk about the fourth part of your story and why this is important. Inevitably, bad things happen in our lives. Terrible things can happen in our lives. Unspeakable things can happen. The fourth part of every story of every person in this room is he uses our oppression to save other people. He uses the oppression. We've been talking about the oppression of the Hebrews. So what's happening is now Moses, who experienced the oppression, God goes to Moses and said, you experienced this. I now want you to go back to the people who are experiencing the oppression, and I want you to do it in my name, with my authority. And when you show up in town in my name, bro, you should watch what's going to happen. The Apostle Paul said that he had a thorn in his flesh. You heard of that, right? The Apostle Paul has a thorn in the flesh. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh. A lot of people have asked, well, what is the thorn in the flesh? That he said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. What is it? What is this thorn? We do know that in the letter of Galatians, he said, Galatians 4:15, I can testify that if you could have done so, you would have tore out your eyes and given them to me. I think now we're on to something. I think it's something with his eyes. We know that the Apostle Paul never wrote any of his letters. He dictated them. And at the end of the book of Galatians, he took the pen and said, see what large letters I write with in my own hand. What is the thorn? The thorn, most scholars believe, is his eyesight. The Apostle Paul was blinded on the road to Damascus. He regained his eyesight, but not to the full extent. That experience partially blinded him. For the rest of his life, he dealt with his lack of sight. In the same way, for the rest of your life, you're going to be dealing with that abuse, the miscarriages, the sickness, that experience, the divorce, all of this. The Apostle Paul then turned his favorite verse into, I have made you a light for the Gentiles. God speaking to Paul. I have made you a light to the Gentiles that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. And this is what I want you to understand. Our oppression becomes the light by which God uses you to help other people see. The very thing that you seethe in anger at God about is the very thing that he's going to turn around and use to help other people when you show up in town in his name with that authority. You stop walking around as a powerless, pushed around victim of a Christian, and instead you assume the identity that he has given you, a child of God, that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. I have the authority of Jesus in this situation. Does that mean he's going to do everything that I ask him to do? No. But that does not change the fact that I'm going to walk into the situation and I'm going to find someone that has gone through the exact same thing that I've gone through. And I have this tremendous empathy towards them. And now I can minister to them in the name of Jesus. That is so powerful that Jesus said at the end of time, people are going to come to me. Did we not cast out demons from people's lives in your name? And he said, yeah, bro, because it was my name, but I never knew you. That's how powerful the name is. Even charlatans can use that authority. And so my question to you is, are you going to spend the rest of your life questioning why this has happened? Or are you going to walk in the authority that's been given you and go to these people that are in oppression in Jesus' name and do the thing that he would do if he were here today. If you start doing that, everything changes. Everything. Our God, we thank you so much that not only can we encounter you, you reveal yourself to us. You take the veil down so that we can enter the court and we can lay our head on your lap. But you don't leave us there for long. Hey, I see the suffering that your friends are having. You know, what's that have to do with me? Well, I'm sending you. I have a lot of excuses. Doesn't matter. I have answers for all of them. I'm sending you in my name. Go do what I would do if I were in your place. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks for watching today's message. Make sure to check out Brian's new book, Finding Favor, God's Blessings Beyond Health, Wealth, and Happiness. To sign up for Brian's newsletter, please go to Brian's website at brianjones.com.